Welcome to Mind Body Monday, and thank you all for joining me. In today's session, I'll be exploring the topic of sugar, the bitter truth, and you will discover why we crave sugar so much, and why is sugar getting such bad press, and really the critical piece in reclaiming your gut health and vitality. And at the end of the session, we're going to have some live questions and answers. And by the way, if you are on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, I have my entire gut health series on tips for great gut health on Instagram. And you can join me in the private Facebook group as well, where a lot of the content you'll find me there as well. And the replays are put on to YouTube. So whether you're hearing me live or on the podcast or on social media, I'm not recommending or suggesting you open those channels if you don't have them already, but you should know that there are other ways for other people to get help as well and get some direction. So just before we kick off with today's really intriguing topic, I just want to share with you my excitement of my upcoming Heal Your Gut program. Now, if you are new to Mind Body Monday or you've been here before, you understand that Mind Body Monday deals with the generalities of gut health, in how it relates to your mood. We discussed that in a lot of depth in previous Mind Body Monday videos, and how serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, all your gut hormones are really mediated, your brain hormones are mediated in the gut. So we go into a lot of detail, generalities on the Mind Body Monday. And I talk about gut health, immune health, your energy, vitality. However, a lot of people have reached out to me and asked specific questions in the Mind Body Monday. So I'm going to be launching a brand new course called Heal Your Gut program. Now, this is an 8-week intensive program. It's not for everybody. It's only for those select few who actually want to take a deeper dive and learn and apply the how-tos, how to heal your gut from the inside out. I've basically taken my 30 years of private practice and condensed them into 8 weeks. So you get to learn in a supportive online community and have your biggest questions answered about gut health. I share with you my mouth-watering recipes that are easy to make and fun in the kitchen for the kids as well. Also, one of the main things is how to avoid flare-ups if anyone is having flare-ups, if anyone has an autoimmune disease, because we know from research that a lot of those are rooted in the gut. So and I'll share with you a little video later on, maybe in about 15 minutes or so, about how you will understand how an autoimmune condition, or how eczema, or how psoriasis, or how migraines, or how anxiety and depression can all be rooted in the gut. And this is so important. So that's coming just in a little bit. So for those of you who want a deeper dive to really begin to heal your gut now, you can join me on this 8-week intensive journey, and we'll cover all things gut in great detail with a lot of support, guidance, and hand-holding with wonderful support materials. Go ahead and just type in the chat gut health, and then I'll be in touch with you later on. To share with you more specifics. So if you're interested in this program, just type gut health in the chat, and you can learn about my step-by-step guide to heal your gut from the inside out. Also on this program, I share with you some of my deeper processes to calm your mind and emotions, settle the gut because of the gut-brain connection mediated through that vagus nerve that I've discussed in previous Mind Body Monday classes. Check out those replays. You'll be able to then calm and heal your gut and nervous system from the inside. So go ahead, type gut health in the chat if this is something for you. So I always like to start off my Mind Body Mondays with a story from my practice. But if this is your first time here on Mind Body Monday and you're figuring, who is this guy? So for those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Avraham Gundle. I'm the founder and director for the Center for Integrated Medicine. And over the last 30 years in private practice, I've been privileged to have helped many, many people recover and go into full remission from a whole host of chronic health diseases, including arthritis, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, heart conditions, thyroid conditions, and mainly gut health issues. So welcome to Mind Body Monday. So this is hot off the press story. I recently saw an 18-year-old young man who was a student coming to see me because he had, guess what, gut issues. A little bit of abdominal pain, a lot of bloating, some diarrhea and constipation going on for the last 4 years. And he didn't know, he was at a loss at what to do. So one of the first questions I asked him is, so tell me a little bit about breakfast, lunch, supper, snacks. Tell me what you're eating, how you're nourishing yourself from the inside. So the morning is chocolate milk and a white pita bread and maybe one of those yummy, delicious fruit, sugar-laden yogurts. Lunch would be some falafel and another pita. Between lunch and dinner, there'd be a whole host of snacks, sugary sweet snacks, and dinner would be falafel, which is a wheat pasta dish, and some fried foods. And when I asked him, what do you drink during the day if you're thirsty? Oh, he just, without flinching, said Coke. So I said, okay, and how much do you drink? 1.5 liters. 1.5 liters of Coke a day. Okay, so we know who's sponsoring the Coke industry. What surprised me most was when I asked him, do you think there's a connection between what you're eating and how you're feeling, or how your tummy's feeling? And he didn't really give too much thought to that. But what surprised me even more was he had been to specialists, he had been to his GP, he had been to GIs, he had been scoped. Everything came out negative. But no one asked him, what are you eating? So obviously there are some glaring issues in his diet. And now if you see them, and if you see a connection, just type in the chat. I'm curious. If you see me looking over to the side, it's because I have a dual monitor. That way I can see you as well as the chat. So if you think there's a connection between his diet and what he's eating, just say yes or no. But sometimes these things are quite glaring, but common sense is not so common. So who knows? It could be the wheat, it could be the gluten, it could be the dairy if he's lactose intolerant, and it could be the sugar. So there's a little bit of an unraveling mystery that needs to go on here. So most people, when they think sugar, they think diabetes. And while this is true, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. Someone's typed in the chat, yikes, sugar and refined flour foods. Yes, Mona, you are spot on, right. And he is, this is common. It's very common in young folk and not too young folk either. So people have in their mind this equation between sugar and diabetes, and that is just the tippy tip of the iceberg. And the purpose of today's Mind Body Monday is not to go into a whole expose on sugar and the damages and danger of sugar. All I'm going to do is bring awareness to sugar as it relates to gut health, and from that, the rest of the body health and mind body health as well. For those of you who are interested in the topic, I really encourage you to see 2 particular books, videos, and material online. And that's the work of Dr. Robert Lustig, Lustig. He is a professor of pediatric endocrinology and specializes in childhood obesity. And he explains the pathway of and the rampant overuse of sugar and how it is really infecting our children. There's another book called Pure, White, and Deadly by John Yudkin. And I think the title gives it away. So those 2 books will just begin your journey on understanding what we're really dealing with here and what the real problem is. So for starters, if I were to ask you, How many names of sugar are there out there today? Go ahead, type in the chat. I'm curious. If you were to guess, how many names of sugar are there in the world? What would you say? Now, if you're watching the live, don't go and do a Google search quickly. Just, off the top of your head, how many names of sugar are there, would you say? So approximately over 60 different names of sugar. And some searches even reveal 68, 87, and the number will keep going up. In fact, most food companies today have a food scientist who specializes in finding the exact sweet spot that stimulates parts of the brain called opioid receptors, the same receptors that are stimulated by drugs like cocaine and heroin through food, through sugar in foods and chemistry within food. Food is not how it used to be. It's a highly evolved, genetic, modified, engineered with great wisdom, expense, and craft to stimulate our brain to want us to have more. So if you are a food label reader like me, it's still quite difficult to move through the smoke screen and figure out, what is really here, even with conscious labeling. In fact, just last week, for a dear friend's birthday, he mentioned to me in passing that he loves dark chocolate. So I went off to find him a nice bar of dark chocolate with some other things for his birthday. And I came across a range of chocolates called no sugar. So that was good marketing. It appealed to me. I picked it up off the shelf and, turned it around and looked at the label. And indeed, there was no sugar. What do they mean? Sucrose. But we know that sugar has 60 plus and counting names for sugar. So it didn't, and sugar means sucrose. So it's highly, highly misleading. So I looked through the ingredient list, and aside from cocoa, mass, solids, and blah, blah, there was 3-4 different kinds of sugar that if you were not trained and understanding in what they are, you would probably think they're just, inert ingredients, but absolutely not. And it happened to be that these 3 or 4 artificial sweeteners were amongst the bad list of sweeteners that are more noxious to the intestinal lining. And I'm going to get to this very shortly. There are certain better sugars, mediocre sugars, and then there are the bad sugars. And the list keeps growing. So let's look at, for example, glucose corn syrup, which I'm sure a fair amount of you heard about. Glucose corn syrup is significantly cheaper than sugar and much sweeter than sugar. So it's used ubiquitously in the food industry for that reason. And when it enters the body, it is absorbed much more quickly than regular sugar. And as a result, it spikes the glucose levels in the blood, which stimulates insulin production, puts a strain on the pancreas, producing the islets or the langerhans, producing the insulin. And then shortly after that, there's a drop, and one's energy levels will then drop. And with that, a mood obviously will drop very often as well. Now, if this continues with high amounts of glucose corn syrup over time, obviously there'll be issues like obesity and possibly insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, but it's also going to erode the gut lining. And this is the focus here. So when you think sugar, don't only think diabetes, think gut, because that is one of the main areas where these sugars attack. Another area is diet sodas. Diet sodas are notoriously loaded with aspartame and other sugars that will also irritate the gut lining. Perhaps not spike your insulin, your glucose levels as much, but definitely will affect the gut lining. So why is there so much addiction to sugar? I think, in days of yore, the diet was so much cleaner. It was harder if you're hunter and gathering out there in the bush. If you wanted honey, you wanted dates, you had to climb up a tree, risk your life. You had to smoke away some bees, maybe get stung in the process. It wasn't as accessible. Nowadays, there are candy stores just full with candy, and it's so cheap. And it's, I think, the biggest thing for kids. But Abba, it's so yummy. That is the turning point. Once you hear it's so yummy, it's very hard to fight that. It's very hard to fight that. And we'll talk about some strategies towards the end about how to educate kids and educate ourselves and help ourselves to hold back. So I really would like to touch on, and with your permission, my angle, which is, this is pretty much how I practice in my clinic with functional and integrated medicine, is what is really at the root of the sugar craving, sugar addiction, aside from its abundance in our diet and sneaked into everything. Unless one's eating a whole food, plant-based diet made at home or consciously prepared, it's very, very hard to stay away completely from the added sugars. But let's go back to the beginning, if you permit me, just for a moment. We are all looking for love. We're all looking for connection. We're all looking to be nourished on a deep emotional and soul level. And I'd like to quote to you just for a moment a teaching from the Aish Kodesh Zal, the Petzesna Rebbe Zal, who writes in one of his Sfarim, Tzav Zerus, the following: the soul of a person loves to feel. It yearns not only for feelings of happiness, but even for melancholy and tearful feelings. A person will listen to horror stories or watch violent movies or scenes, and by the way, create them in their mind as well, to actually bring them to feel tearful or feel sad or whatever it happens to be, because that feeling is what's missing or what's so needed. And he writes that emotion is the food of the soul. It is as just a need as the body has a need for food, so the soul has a need for emotion. So all love and all connection and ultimate sweetness is really a deep spiritual thing. It's sublime. It's rooted in the Creator himself. It's rooted in what's called the Noam Elyon, the supernal sweetness. And there's a love and connection there that's available to each one of us with consciousness, with hard work, with diligence, and a lot of prayer. And when we can access that or taste that or even know that that's where the true truth is, that's where the true sweetness is, then as it devolves and falls from that high place, it takes a form in the physical world in many, many guises, the fallen forms of love. And it's really about seeking love and connection and sweetness in the right places and not in the wrong places. And for me, at any rate, this is an understanding that helps me to make informed decisions and also to hold back when I want to reach for something more or something sweet or something that, and I'm not for a minute saying zero sweetness. That's not my approach at all. I am saying, though, everything has its time and its place and its amount. When Coke comes along and says, Coke is life, and Coke's marketing philosophy is to bring a Coke can within the arm's reach of desire and spend trillions of dollars in creating that availability. The competition is in our face. It's ubiquitous. It's all over. And it starts at a very young age. But I think when we understand that this is fallen love, this is fallen sweetness, this is fallen connection, just that awareness itself, for me at any rate, helps me to seek it in its higher form, seek this connection, this love, the sweetness in a more noble way. And it makes the battle much easier and doable, because it's not only about getting it in that quick fix place. So this is where I think all sugar cravings and sugar addictions, and ultimately all addictions, are rooted. And then there's a pathway. The pathway is slowly but surely, with lots of love, self-love, lots of self-compassion, taking the pathway to find that right balance for each person in their own way. So just coming back to earth for a moment, the average American eats about 77 grams of sugar each day. A gram is about, let's say a teaspoon is about, level teaspoon is about 5 grams. And the WHO's guidelines, which probably needs a little update, is 3 to 4 times less than what people are actually doing. And when a person is exposed to so much sugar, it just opens the doorway to so many illnesses, and you'll see why shortly. Now, here's a piece of research that is fascinating. In animal studies, they found that sugar is 8 times more difficult and harder to get off than cocaine. That's fascinating. I'm not going to go into the details of the study and how they rigged animals to have access through a lever to sugar and opioid stimulators. But sugar was much, much harder to get off in Coke, and gave them just a quick fix in a way that was is what got them so addicted. Now, through the last 15, 20 years, researchers particularly have known that sugar creates havoc with our metabolism and insulin, but it's only recently emerging the impact that these sweet foods in excess can actually damage the gut lining. More specifically, sugar and its derivatives, its 60 plus names, cause inflammation and changes in the microbiome itself, which is a whole colony of ecology living within our gut. In fact, some research in science, translational medicine, showed the inflammatory effects of sugar specifically on the gut lining and changes in the gut microbiome. So when the gut lining is inflamed and the microbiome is disrupted, a condition called leaky gut syndrome could easily occur. And I'd like to share with you just a short 1 minute, just over 1 minute video on this leaky gut syndrome, because I think it'll answer a lot of people's questions when people come to me and say, listen, Avraham, what's eczema got to do with the gut? What's my migraines got to do with the gut? Or my mood swings, or depression? What's that, or anxiety, or their autoimmune disease? What's that got to do with the gut? And I get the question. It's a good question. But when you see this 1 minute video, you'll begin to understand that, hey, this makes total sense. So bear with me as I transition to this short video, please.
Our intestines are lined with barrier cells, called epithelial cells, that transport nutrients from food into our bloodstream. These epithelial cells have tight junctions between them to ensure that no undigested food particles, digestive waste, or toxins escape into our blood and create health complications. Healthy epithelial cells are supported by a balanced microbiome of good and bad bacteria, which is supported by a nutrient-rich intestinal environment. Stress, poor diet, lack of exercise, and use of antibiotics can disrupt our microbiome and intestinal environment. These disruptions can lead to weak epithelial cells and loose epithelial junctions. Without tight junctions, undigested food particles, digestive waste, and toxins can leak out of our intestines and into our bloodstream, causing inflammatory immune responses, various digestive disorders, and changes to the normal function of the digestive tract. This is often called leaky gut.
Wonderful. So in one minute, we've just got 30 years of medical training. So you begin to understand the dynamics here. And you can begin to understand once the gut's inflamed, the microbiome's disrupted, and those tight junctions expand, then a gateway directly into the bloodstream that avoids the immune system surveillance can happen of foreign particles, virus, bacteria, undigested foods. And as a result of these things coming into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be until they're fully processed within the gut, this can lead to allergies, arthritis, autoimmune conditions, rashes, acne, chronic fatigue, mood disorders, autism, dementia, cancers, and a whole host of illnesses. So it becomes so important to be a guardian, not only a guardian for our physical, mental, emotional health, but our gut specifically, because what a lot of people don't get is even though the gut is inside our body, it's really part of the outside world. Just imagine for a moment if a person were to swallow a pipe into their mouth, through their gut, and out the other side. So there's this pipe going through, cylinder, let's say. So you can put in candy in this pipe, in the cylinder, and will just come out through the other end. It's really just outside the world. It's the outside of his body or her body, but it's just passing through the inside of our body. Does that make sense? So that's how our gut is. Our gut is within our body, but it's part of the outside world. So if a person were to puncture that cylinder, for example, then as you put that marble in or whatever it is, and it can just find its way through that cylinder where it shouldn't be going. So a healthy, intact gut barrier and a healthy, intact gut flora and the microbiome will then create the perfect environment for full and complete digestion. And only then, once fully dealt with the body, will the body accept it into the bloodstream, where it will nourish our cells, energize our body, and create the vital health that we also want. But until that happens, we really need to nurture and guard the gut. So let me, for a moment, share with you some strategies to how to limit the sugar in our diet. Firstly, becoming aware that sugar and sugar foods is a major blight to our immune system, our physical, mental, and emotional health. That's known, and those references I mentioned to you in the beginning of the series of tonight are very important to look at. That's Dr. Robert Lustig and the other book, Pure, White, and Deadly. So once you know about that, then to become conscious of actually reading labels and becoming a gatekeeper. Sometimes in our home, kids have done the shopping, helping out, etc. And I'd look at one ketchup and another ketchup. One's got 1 teaspoon of sugar and one's got 4 teaspoons of sugar per 100 grams. So I'll just get rid of the other one. And my kids are constantly noticing me reading labels. In fact, just last week, there was a barbecue and someone reached for the barbecue sauce and I didn't say anything, but I noticed that there was a pathway from the fridge before it got to their barbecue, they actually took a moment to look at the label. I noticed an expression on their face, which is a good thing, and then, the squeeze on their plate. It's not about being, it's about being informative and a gatekeeper for myself, that's for sure, but empowering my kids, my family, my patients, etc., to make the right decisions. I don't want to be a policeman. That's not my job. I want to be a loving father. And a lot of this begins with just good role modeling, a healthy attitude, and on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, on birthdays, on special occasions, that's the right time and place. But every single day, day in, day out, that's the exposure that creates the inflammation in the gut and a gateway into many other health issues. Something that a lot of people don't know, and I think it's really helpful to know, is that the taste buds on our tongue have a lifespan of about 14 days. That's, by the way, if someone does have tongue surgery, the tongue, as painful as it is, can be, if bitten or cut, does heal extremely quickly. So that we can take, that knowledge we can take to our advantage, that it takes about 2 weeks for your tongue, your palate to get used to having less sugar in your diet. And in my practice, I see there's basically 2 kinds of people. There's those who do things cold turkey, and then those people who do things more gradually. Whatever is the right way for you. And one of my patients, I asked him, he has two or three coffees a day, and I was less focused on that. I was focused on, well, how many sugars do you have? It was 5 teaspoons of sugar per coffee. So I said, is there any way? So, this is the Middle East. We did start a negotiation. So he found he was able to just every week just to take off 1 sugar from each of those coffees. And then over a space of 5 or 6 weeks, he was down to just half a teaspoon of sugar per cup. And then eventually he just enjoyed the coffee without it. It took that time for his tongue to get used to the shift. There was emotional change as well. He realized he had more energy and less moody. But he told me something else. He said, food just tastes so much better. Just carrots, vegetables, fruit, just things were so much better without being overrode by his overstimulated taste buds. So this is a beginning in how to manage the sugar, the issues with sugar and sweetness. And if you join me on this Mind Body Monday today late, I just want to share once again before I end with some questions. If you missed the exciting news at the beginning, it's the launch of my new Heal Your Gut program. It's really only designed for people who want to take a deeper dive in their health issues, specifically as it's related to the gut. It's super practical. You'll learn and apply my step-by-step approach to heal your gut from the inside out. You are in a supportive environment, a supportive online community, and you'll be able to avoid the mistakes that a lot of people are making and get your gut sorted out as quickly as possible over the 8 weeks. So if you're interested, just type in gut health in the chat and I'm going to come back to you. Now, remember, Mind Body Mondays is really focusing on self-care being the heart of healthcare. And all you need to do is just take one step, micro step, and celebrate your success, but to move your health and well-being in mind, body, and soul to the next level. So I wish you all the very best. Look forward to seeing you next week on Mind Body Monday.